is Jessica Crow. I am the host of Change Leader Insights, and I'm really excited because today I have here with me Abhijit. I'm going to read you his bio, and then we're going to get into a really important top of mind conversation about AI. Let me go ahead and read his bio. So, Abhijit, he's a serial entrepreneur and Columbia University alum. He grew up immersed in his family's retail business, giving him an intimate understanding of the challenges faced in the industry. With an engineering background and a staff engineer role at VMware's Office of the CTO, he developed a deep love for solving complex problems using technology. Abhijit has set out to bridge the gap between traditional retail and cutting-edge AI-powered solutions. And today he is going to talk with us, which I'm really grateful for, about just what we can expect as leaders, as change leaders, how AI is going to fundamentally change organizational cultures and what we need to be thinking about as change leaders from a governance perspective. But before we get into that, do you mind just sharing a little bit more detail around who you are and sort of how you got to where you are today?
Right. First of all, thanks for having me, Jessica. It's just been a pleasure. So a quick background about myself, right? As you rightly mentioned, I'm a serial entrepreneur. Um, had my first stint back in 2015, did that until 2021, and that's when I joined VMware's Office of the CTO as a staff engineer. Worked on a couple of research-focused projects there. And just last year, I decided to jump back into academics, and here I am as a Columbia alum. I just graduated a couple of months back,
Congratulations
trying to
again. Yeah.
find out, trying to find out new ways to get back into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, well, good. Well, I have no doubt you'll find much success there. Well, let's talk about AI. So first, before we get into some of the fundamental changes that it will have from a culture and governance perspective, for those that are listening, and I think it is a top of mind topic for organizations, for individuals. How do we leverage AI? What should we be thinking about? What is you know what how would you describe just AI in its simplest
Yeah,
terms? Just maybe we just start there.
right. I mean, if one had to have a definition or define AI, right? I mean, as the name suggests, it's artificial intelligence. Intelligence ties back to human intelligence, and this is
Mm-hmm.
that you're trying to replicate it through a machine or an algorithm, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the goal is to get as much near to as how a human brain functions. That's, I believe, the basic fundamental definition of AI, and essentially as how a human brain functions, it needs data. I mean,
Right.
human brain functions based on a few facts, based on a few assumptions for that matter, right? Similarly, any AI model, right? They function based on facts, which essentially are data provided to it. And then
Mm-hmm.
build on top of that to kind of present you the output or the desired output. And it will be naive to not assume that most of the organizations are thinking about integrating AI or as
Mm-hmm.
AI agents today, right?
Right.
Into their companies or into their organizations, whether it is their supply chain, whether it is their operations, or even customer service for that matter, right? We have seen
Right.
a lot of AI or AI agents being integrated into the customer service operations of most of these organizations, whether it is B2B or B2C. And what one thing which is interesting I see is, right, we have these new tools, new products coming up uh, into the market much faster than ever, right? And
Mm-hmm.
what this has done is it has opened up a web of tools, or I would say plethora of tools for that matter, uh,
Right.
for these organizations to deal with, for a leader or anyone in the leadership capacity to deal with. And what that does, it creates a siloed approach when it comes to the data, which is
Right.
essentially the fundamental aspect of AI model, right? There is a very famous saying that a model is as good, or an AI model is as good as its data, right?
Right. Garbage in, garbage out, right?
Exactly, right? I mean, the assumptions that the model makes, right? It is based on the data that it is given or that it is fed. And imagine a use case where you have an AI agent running a customer service bot, and the agent keeps on asking customers the same sort of questions again and again, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is a huge gap now with your customer service that the AI agent does not have the complete data it needs to solve the customer's query or to solve
Right.
the customer's problem. And that affects directly your customer satisfaction score for that matter.
Right.
Right? Imagine like you pinging a customer service of an organization or a company, and the bot keeps on asking you, what's your name? Well, come on, you need to know my name for that matter, right?
Right. Right.
Exactly. So the fundamental problem when it comes to adopting AI, I would say, or even integrating AI, is the fact that most of the organizations have these data in silos.
Right.
They don't have a unified data approach or a
Mm-hmm.
unified data strategy uh, to take a AI agent or to take the AI model to the next level to integrate into their operations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that is where an organization really needs to ask themselves, right? Or really needs to ask themselves is your data AI ready? Or
Mm-hmm.
say, I would go one step further and say, is your organization AI ready?
Right, right. That might mean them right. So let's continue down that path of thinking because I think where the starting point really should be for anyone who's in a decision making role about AI or someone who will be supporting the integration of AI needs to be thinking about the readiness, the change readiness, the AI readiness of the organization. And what you're describing is today, many organizations, they're operating in silos. This is something that anyone who's tried to implement a change will bump into because of how companies have been set up. And sometimes it's for security and privacy and other reasons, right? Regulatory, or just, you have to protect certain information. And what you're suggesting is that AI, because of how it learns, because it's like the human brain, the data in, data out, it really needs access to more data across the organization, which is a level of access that maybe the rest of most of the organization isn't familiar with. So how do you get like AI ready in that context? How should be leaders thinking about that?
You're actually spot on when you talk about the concerns of not having the silos, right?
Yeah.
And one of them is governance, right?
Yeah.
Governance, in my opinion, governance is based on, like, say, three pillars, right? One is data quality, the
Uh-huh.
second one is security, as you rightly pointed out, and the third one is availability.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I believe most of the leaders in an organization fail to understand governance is the fact that they always look at governance as a tick in the box for security and compliance.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I believe there is a major gap in how organizations approach data governance for that matter. And in my opinion, organizations should look at data governance from a data democratization perspective,
Mm-hmm.
also from a data democratization perspective. What this does is it helps these organizations to position data governance not as a constraint, uh,
Mm-hmm.
but as a enabler for smarter, I would say, data-backed decisions.
Right. Right.
For example, right, think of a fact that you're establishing clear data governance policies to
Mm-hmm.
ensure that your AI-driven insights are accurate. Coming back to
Mm-hmm.
the same question again, that same use case that again pointed out, right? I was working for a large box retailer actually a few years back, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, you have these stores, right? Retailers have, right? And those stores typically go in thousands. If you're considering North America, right? They might go in thousands.
Mm-hmm.
Every town will have a store, right? Every town will have a big box retailer store. So what I noticed actually back then was that they did not have a single source of data when it came to their locations.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever a customer service agent or whenever a customer was pinging a customer service agent, that agent had to go through tons of files and tons of sources of data to come to a conclusion that this item was bought in a particular store.
Got it.
Now, to think from a high level, right? This is such a fundamentally skewed up process that your locations are not in a single place.
Right.
Think of the fact that millions of people make millions of transactions every day, right? Now, imagine the level of complexity that introduces when your data is not uh,
Mm.
your data is siloed. So, the moment I would say a leader starts to look at governance from a data democratization perspective, uh, you start thinking about things like, okay, how this will integrate with the other 50 products that I have or the
Mm.
product suite that I have in the company, right? It's the same company, it's the same organization after all, right? Even though it's a different department. You start seeing fundamental cultural change where leaders not only start advocating security, which they do on a very, very good basis, they
Mm-hmm.
also start advocating for data sharing, for, I would say, cross-functional collaboration for that matter. And what this does is, right, it builds a trust in your AI systems as well. Because now, if your data is siloed and your AI models or your AI agents don't have proper data access, then the trust in those AI systems is also very less from a leadership
Mm-hmm.
perspective as well, right? Because that is also important for an organization to completely embrace the AI agent or whatever AI you have been implementing. And I would say there are two things which are key here, right? One is integrations that I spoke about, and the other one
Uh-huh.
is APIs. The majority of products or majority of leaders today, when they are talking about a new initiative or a new product, right? They always keep APIs or integrations as a secondary feature, or I would say as a low priority feature.
Uh-huh.
It is always okay, we will look at it in V2 of the product or in a V3 of a product. However, I feel that while evaluating new products or services, these leaders need to have APIs or how standardized the product is or how standardized the services to be kept
Uh-huh.
at the very high level in V1 or even beta version of the product. Now, what that does is it creates a central repository of things, a central
Yeah.
data repository, which every team, every individual can in the organization can go and look into. That, okay, these are the 10 things that the companies or the organization already has. And
Mm-hmm.
probably I can leverage it into our product development, which will
Mm-hmm.
save
Mm-hmm.
time and it will also make data access much more better and easier. So yeah.
I was going to say, it was just to kind of lead into this. I think the culture change, the culture impact that this level of accessibility, having centralized data, centralized tools, standard KPIs, this is going to be a bigger shift than I think many organizations are potentially prepared for. And the reason I say that is historically, at least in my experience, I don't know if this is standard across the board, but you have certain teams and functions that specialize, their capability is unique to that function, and maybe there's skill sets that cross over the different functions. But if you're in finance or accounting or you're a data scientist, individuals, teams in the organizations rely on you to give them the information that they're requesting. So I used to work in a healthcare company, and if I wanted an analysis of data, I would have to go to a certain team to get that information. And could take time. My request was prioritized because I didn't have certain skills to go do the query myself and the analysis. So, what you're saying is with AI, with the AI tools, with the transition from having these data silos to something more centralized, really the playing field inside the organization is going to become more level. Instead of me having to wait for information, if there's strong data governance around the data, maybe I've got certain permissions that allow me to access certain types of data, but I can be much more efficient and effective. And it sort of changes the roles and responsibilities of those specialists who have been, they've been the ones that have been the information managers, right? So this is going to change the dynamics of the organization and how, am I on the right track here with my
That's
thinking,
right.
or do you think I'm maybe
Yeah.
going down the wrong direction?
No, that's absolutely correct, actually, and right. You correctly pointed out that it has to be done through proper governance policies.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just have access to anything and anyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Proper governance policies, I believe this is a reality, or this will soon be a reality. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I also agree to your point that information sharing, or I would say data sharing at this moment, is very restricted to specific teams, specific departments,
Mm-hmm.
specific individuals for that matter, right? Um, with Gen AI, right, one good thing that has happened is, right, with just a prompt, you can access data. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to go through channels, go through data engineers, data scientists to give you the access that you need.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I've also noticed when it comes to data scientists or data engineers is, right, there is a very inherent urge to give more than that is requested. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so their mind is trained to keep churning data and extract as much insights as they can from the piece of data,
Mm-hmm.
which is sometimes good, but most of the times it is an impediment for the decision making process, because now you as a leader has much more information than you need.
Mm.
At times good and at times not good. Uh,
Information paralysis. You can't make a
exactly.
decision because you're like, well,
Right.
what? Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So with the prompt approach, now you can just access data that you need with
Mm-hmm.
few more insights that are tied to that data. And I'm not saying you negate the need of a data scientist, because you still need the data scientist to present the data, to extract more and more information of it. But it kind of gives you that flexibility and the freedom to kind of access it at a prompt at your fingerprint.
Right.
If I to
Right.
kind of generalize it, at your fingertips. So
Yeah.
so that's where I feel AI and AI readiness comes into picture. And
Yeah.
seen, I've seen both sides of the table. I've seen organizations do it effectively, and I've seen organizations who don't do it effectively. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, so those organizations that are doing it effectively, I mean, you've mentioned a few things that we need to be thinking about already: data silos, data governance, and so on. What about change management here, right? You've talked about, the organizations that are doing it well. Are they embedding change management into their process? So, from an AI ready, like how are they preparing? Not only from a technical perspective, but a people perspective. Like, what are they, are you seeing them do something different there, or are they just doing good change management, period? They're preparing their teams for a shift.
I would say they do it. I would say
Yeah.
it is in their processes and culture to do it right from day one. Uh,
Yeah.
for example, even before a team starting to implement or a team buying a product, right? There is a bit of due diligence that every department, every organization does. And there are some processes as a part of this due diligence that these companies take care of. For example,
Mm-hmm.
if I would say if there is a requirement of a product which has some implications or which has some dependencies on other products for that matter, right? Instead of reinventing the wheel, there is always an ask from the department or from the leader to go and check if there is already something that is being implemented from a product
Mm-hmm.
perspective and from a data perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And if there is always an ask by the leader to go and talk to that team
Mm-hmm.
before starting to implement ourselves or before making a decision to buy a product or a service.
Mm-hmm.
These are the processes that are done as a part of due diligence even before anything is being implemented or anything is being bought by the organization or the department. So I would say yes. If there are right processes in place and if there is a box to tick off saying that, okay, we have gone through the repository, we have gone through the central command that is there, and there is nothing similar that is already there, or there is something similar which we can leverage, that box needs to be ticked off as a part of the process before going ahead and starting the implementation. So I feel there is a process involved. It's not like they just do it. Uh,
Right.
it's something that you have to tick it off before you move ahead.
Yeah. And that would go, not just for AI, but for really any technology change in particular, but any change. What you're describing is, well, two things that stood out. One, conversations are being had, conversations across teams, across leaders. There's an openness and a transparency and desire to collaborate, which is so fundamental to successful change initiatives. One of them, it could be AI, right? You're wanting to implement AI, you're going out, you're having conversations, there's awareness across teams, and you're thinking about, can we leverage the tools that we've already invested in, or how do we, make a smart investment so we create one solution that meets the needs of most. What you're also talking about, which I think is really important for people who are listening to this show, who are in roles where every organization is implementing multiple changes at any given time. You're describing a little bit of portfolio management in your due diligence process. So how do you look across the board and think about the different initiatives or changes or projects that the organization would like to implement? And what you're describing is you're having those critical conversations that could prevent or could combine potential changes. And so that's another way to reduce, I'm taking a leap here a bit, but change fatigue in an organization where there's so many things that are changing so quickly and AI is driving that. How do you prevent the organization teams from going in so many different directions? And you're saying you need to do that due diligence piece, because that is how you're going to be smart about your investment, smart about, evaluating whether your organization is AI ready, and then also whether the organization, more importantly, is just ready for more change. And how do you prevent too much change from happening at any given time? Well, you were going to say something. Go ahead.
So that's absolutely correct, right? And I take back to the same example that we discussed about customer support, right?
Right.
When a team is tasked of creating an AI agent or AI bot for customer support, uh, it's not just sales data, or it's not just your name or your customer data that is involved here, right? Going ahead, if you want to know the bot about the loyalty programs that are available, the law,
Mm-hmm.
or even the customer satisfaction score that is associated with that customer. These things need cross-functional collaboration, right? No
Mm-hmm.
one team has this bit of data. At least in a large organization, every team deals. There is a separate team or a department dealing with each of these things. So I believe uh, when it is fundamentally necessary to do that due diligence, as you said, before even starting that initiative, even though if it is not being done at this moment, it gives you that additional advantage of saying that it might take a year or a couple of years, or it might not happen ever for that matter. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of change initiatives do end up that way, actually. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
they never see the light of the day, to be honest. Um,
Yeah.
so it is important to do that bit of due diligence, is what I feel, and you're absolutely right there.
Yeah, yeah, great. Well, this has been really informative. Is there anything else that, as a leader in the organization, as an organization more broadly, is thinking about, is my company AI ready? Are my teams AI ready? Anything that we haven't talked about yet that you want people to hear or be thinking about, or have we really covered some of the major levers so far in this conversation?
Yeah, I would say start small.
Yeah.
it looks like a daunting process initially, right? I mean, you can't just, it's not just, okay, there are 100 different data repositories that you have, and one fine day you come over and say, let's have a central repository. That's not going to
Right. That's
happen.
not going to happen
Yeah,
overnight.
exactly. You have to
Yeah.
start small. In fact, that might never happen ever, to be honest,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's just that you have to start small, and you have to find ways to integrate instead of
Yeah.
making a big bang change. And that is easy to do. That is fairly easy to do. And it has to come from right from top, uh,
Yeah.
right from the
That
leader.
leadership engagement.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I would say start small.
Yeah, no, that's smart advice. So thank you for that. I think that's important for people who are listening to hear as well, and not feeling like they have to do it all at once in order to, stay competitive or even get a competitive advantage. I would align with what you're saying. If you start small, then you can test and learn and then prevent some of the more costly mistakes from ever happening because you're iterating. So really helpful. Abhijit, thank you so much for your time today. I've got several conversations coming throughout the year that'll dive into aspects of AI, and you're the first one. So this will be the first AI focused conversation to air, and I'm really excited to share this. So thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure talking to you, Jessica.